Okay, so if this was an actual skirt and we were going to line our centre back zip, we would have to overlock our centre back and our lining, and because it's an open seam, and when we get to it, we have to overlock our lining on our hems and our side seams as well. Because at the hem, it'll be separate at the hem, so you'll better put your hand up in between your main and your lining. You don't bag them out into each other. Okay, so that means that you will have to overlock your seams on your lining. You won't need to overlock the ones that are up the top that are attached to your facing or your zip, but anything that's on your centre back or your hem of your lining, you'll need to overlock. Okay, so that is the first thing that's on the list, but because this is just a stage sample, we're not going to overlock our little pieces. There's really no point. But just so you know, make sure you write it on your stage samples so that you overlock your centre back, and you overlock them separately because it would be an open seam. Okay, if you were going to do that seam together, because you'd say for instance down below you didn't have a split or anything you needed to work into, then you'd do them, you could stitch it first and then overlock them together as a closed seam. Your choice either way. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mark up our opening. So this is our main here, on the wrong side of our main, so that's my right side underneath, so on my wrong side, I'm going to mark up my opening on my zip. I've cut it away so that it sits away from my teeth, and I'm going to mark up 1 centimetre seam allowance around that edge because we've got 1 centimetre seam allowance on it. Mark it up, down through there, up through the centre back. And the reason we're marking it up is because this corner here, down the bottom here, that's going to be a pivot corner. Okay, so we do the same on the other side. Mark it up. Centimetre seam allowance on your main. Okay, all the way through. So you've got it. You will also need to mark in the diagonal cut line, and you'll see in a minute why. The diagonal cut line that goes in, that you're going to cut into to be able to pivot around. Mark that in, because what you'll notice, if you're going to now mark in your centre back where you are going to stitch, when you're going to close up your centre back below your zipper, which you do before you do anything else, see how that stitch line, when you're marking up, instead of stopping up here, it actually, and you're going to cut diagonally through there, if you stop up at level with your notch up here, what you'll find is then you have to snip straight through your cut line. And what that means is that then that stitch line will unravel and undo itself. So you actually need to draw in your diagonal stitch cut line, and then basically you're going to, when you stitch your back tack, stitch up and back tack and stop at that diagonal cut line. Okay, that's really important. You're going to mark up the same on your lining. You don't need to mark up all the way on your lining, but you definitely need to mark up your pivot corner, so you know where that pivot corner is. Really important. The same as this, you probably didn't need to mark all the way up if you don't want to, as long as you've got that pivot corner in there. That's really important. This one you don't need to mark in the diagonal line because it's set further away and your 1 centimetre seam allowance doesn't interfere with your cut line. So, make sure you've got that corner. It's really important if that's for your pivot corner. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to stitch up our centre back seams on our main and on our lining. Okay, lining's kind of super easy because it goes into a centimetre seam allowance. So basically you stop when you get to the end of that cut edge. It's chewing. Why are you chewing? Stuck, didn't it? Big time stuck. Okay, put our right sides together of our main, and we're going to stitch up. When we stitch up, remember we're going to stop at that diagonal cut line, really important. If this was a long seam, which it's not, but if this was a long seam, you might choose to put double-sided sticky tape under that to hold it in place. You can do that now if you would like to, but because it's a short seam, you don't have to, because you should be able to work it with your hands. But you know, definitely if you feel the need to, right to that diagonal line, spinning around. Okay. So now I've marked into it and I've stitched up to the diagonal line. This one here I've marked into on both sides. Make sure you mark in on your wrong side. Don't mark on your right side where it's visible. Make sure you mark on your wrong side. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stitch my facings, because that's my facing. Remember, your facing should be marked with notches at the top centre back, so you know that that's the top centre back and you don't accidentally mix it up and put the wrong side. You need to make sure you've got them in the right place. I'm going to flip them over like that, and I'm going to stitch that seam together and stitch that seam together through there. Centimetre seam allowance, stitching facing to your lining. Okay, and that's the end of stage 1.